Good morning. You hear me back there?
No, they can't hear.
I think louder. How about now? You should be able to feel the vibration of my voice as it comes through. Okay. I'm Ed Sperling. I'm the editor-in-chief of Semiconductor Engineering. I am here with Lip-Bu Tan, who is the CEO of Cadence. Probably needs no introduction, but Lip-Bu, thanks for taking time. We've been coming to DAC for years and years, and we've been following the Moore's Law curve for many years, but the markets that we've gone through, from mainframe to mini computer to PC to
Mobile.
smartphone, have all been fairly consistent. It's smaller and smaller and smaller. Now we're going off in completely different directions. So we are still shrinking. We're going into different directions with that as well. But wanted to find out from you, what do you see as the next big things? What does this audience really need to be concerned about looking out, and which markets are going to be hot?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be here and share the panel with you. And then in terms of what is the next big things, there's no one big things like the mobile or the cell phone, but there's a lot of field. If you add up together, it's much bigger and it's exciting. Clearly, this whole IoT we're talking about, the autonomous driving in the automotive side, and then also the whole entire machine learning, deep learning, going to be applied very broadly. And when you talk about IoT, I'm very, very interested in the whole industrial IoT. That's intelligent edge, and I think going to be a big opportunity. And then beside that, there's a lot of great opportunity with a lot of disruption in terms of innovation. I'll give you an example. In the whole data center cloud infrastructure is a sea change going on. And clearly, it's more, the different workload, the big data analytics is huge. And so whoever owns the data are going to be more power to them. They can do a lot with it and then can monetize it. And so I think clearly there's a race in terms of collecting the data from IoT, from car, and this whole web, the entire hyperscale web services is going to be a huge changing the dynamic of the whole data application. So I think that's so exciting. If you add up all together, it's huge. So I'm excited about the whole semiconductor industry.
I want to dig into some of those, but one of the things I want to look at first is what does this mean for EDA? Because EDA has been functioning on the lines of, this is going to be one chip and we're going to do derivatives of this one chip and we're going to sell billions of units of this. A lot of these markets are, at least at this point, much smaller. So what do you have to do in design?
So a couple of interesting things on the implication to EDA. So first of all, I think clearly the whole machine learning, deep learning going to be a big, I mentioned earlier. And at Cadence, we are deploying massively into all our tools. And then from the digital side to the verification side, and how all this influence the intelligence we have, how to make it faster and timely, accurate. And that I think is we apply to our own tool to support the industry change. And then secondly, I think there's a huge change in terms of the customer requirement. And so we are kind of gradually move up from EDA to the system design enablement to meet some of the requirement. And then part of that whole EDA to the system design enablement is to really drive some of the tool to optimize for the system requirement. And then that include also the 2.5D, 3D advanced packaging, and not just the silicon packaging, also to the entire system packaging. And then the other part is the whole system analysis, system modeling, and the simulation. And so that you cannot just wait until you tape out the chip and then you found, oh my God, the power is too high, or signal integrity issue. Then you go back and do the respin, and the metal spin is very expensive. So I think for the advanced node, you really have to do it first time right. And so we basically try to provide the solution to provide the customer requirement for their first time pass. And then the other part is I think also very important is silicon becomes so complex on the SoC. IP become very important. So we're embarked on the whole IP initiative and then providing the building block that the system company can require to really build the building block. And it had to be silicon proven. The quality of the IP is critical for the success for the customer. So I think at the end of the day, we're providing the solution to the customer. And my customer right now, 40+%, the system company and the service provider, they're all quietly building up optimizing some of the solution they need. So we just have to listen very carefully what they need and then be the great partner to support them either through acquisition or organically develop from that. So I think I'm very glad the culture of innovation at Cadence is kicking in now. The last 3 years, we have 23 new products organically developed, not through acquisition. And so we're going to continue that path because not too many companies to acquire, and the customer are counting on us to continue to developing the next generation, the requirement to meet their requirement.
You mentioned 2.5D and some of the advanced packaging. We've been talking about this for a long time. I think Cadence has been talking about it since the late 90s. I think you guys were probably almost 15 years ahead of the market, which is pretty good lead time, I think, to get things done. But is this becoming real? If so, what's changed and why? And what do you have to do now that you didn't do in the past?
Yeah, it's very interesting. A few years ago, we talked to a couple of our key partners in foundry and packaging and testing, world-class company. They all said about 3D, 2.5D is great. We are looking at each other, who will be the customer paying for it? And so we are kind of looking and we're talking how great we are. We're working with the TSMC and other foundry partners in terms of the info and all the packaging requirement. And we try to get ready for the customer, and the customer is not ready. And guess what? Last year I was skiing and in Utah, and I got called, and then from the leading packaging and testing company, we want to meet. And I said, well, it's a shutdown. You want to meet? Sure. We will have my team out from their vacation come and meet with them. And we follow up meeting with them in Asia. And guess what? The customer are chasing them, and they're chasing us. So we are delighted. And so clearly, there's a huge demand from the customer side in terms of 2D, 2.5, 3 and 3D on some of the key application, like high-speed SerDes is critical to have a low power, high-speed SerDes. And then some of the silicon photonics packaging is critical. And so I think this is music to my ear, and then now starting to kick off. And we're going to be deeply supporting those customers that request us. And we have a very clear year to hear from them and then supporting them.
Well, at least now we know where to find you around Christmas break. One of the things that you had mentioned here is the IP. Does the IP have to be characterized differently to fit into a 2.5D or a fan-out wafer level package than what's been done in the past? What changes there?
Yeah, IP is critical for us. I'm just delighted. My good friend Babu going to be running my IP business, and Babu has been working for me for about 20 years, from Centillium to BCM that I back him, and so someone that I like a lot, and he's going to really driving some of the key IP required to meet some of this customer requirement, and so star IP is critical, and then clearly the silicon photonic packaging is really the bottleneck for some of the high speed, like 12.8 terabit per second to 25.6 terabit per second to 51.2 terabit per second that I'm heavily investing in, and for the hyperscale web service company. And so those come in handy. And then same thing with the 2.5D, 3D for some of this SerDes and some of the key application that will be really, really badly needed. And then some of this key IP, I correctly point out, had to calibrate and then make sure that we meet the customer requirement. So there's a lot of collaboration with our customer. I think we are going through this kind of a new phase of EDA, and that we had to really work closely collaborating with our key partner. And the partner is not just TSMC and ARM, a lot of more different potential partners that we have. We highlight about the MathWorks partnership with, and then a couple of others like Aero Electronics partnership with, so that we can really drive some of the next generation requirement from the IP point of view, from tool point of view, and packaging point of view, and also verification point of view.
You know, when I look back at the early ideas about advanced packaging, it was analog IP does not scale, therefore we're going to leave it where it is. Most of the examples that we have of advanced packaging these days are everything is shrinking. We have 10 nanometer packages. Is that going to change? Are we going to start seeing, pick from what makes the most sense of your SerDes is sitting at 130 or 65, that's where you want to use it and put it together with something else?
Right. So I think depend on what application and what market, vertical market you go after. They have different requirement. One thing about what we have is we try to form a fully integrated solution. The packaging related, we put it under Tom Beckley. He run the analog virtual, and also on the system analysis. So I think a lot to do with vertical market customer requirement. So we want to provide the fully integrated, not only on the analog side, the custom mixed signal side, and also on our implementation on the digital side and the verification side, because it's all intertwined together. You cannot just depend on one. And then back to the SerDes side, right now we are pursuing more into the very high end, 5612 gig SerDes and even beyond, because this is what the requirement from the customer. And so we have a very laser focus on some of this high-speed SerDes and how we're going to get there, and then to support our customer because it's badly needed. And so I think it just depends on what application, what customer require, and we listen carefully, and some of them we collaborate with them to make sure that we meet their requirement.
Can the tools and methodologies that are in place now handle all this? Do we need to upgrade the same way everybody's been starting to upgrade the older tools?
Yeah, so I think we continue to upgrade in multiple fronts, and one is clearly on the most advanced node, because people are pushing on the most advanced node. And then secondly, some of this solution that we may need to have not just the tool alone, and then packaging, where to add on to it, and then some of the key IP we need to bring in on board to support that. So I think in some way we just have to look out new frontier, new technology, either in Israel or in China or in US. So we're reaching out to all the key professors. We are very active program with some of the key leading professors, like Andrew, like Jason and Cheng Ming of the world. Really look at the next generation requirement, and then how can we get there and get the expert view to collaborating with our engineering leader, continue to drive that.
Are there any startups that are coming out in these areas, or is it pretty much you're going to have to do this organically, which is a much bigger burden on your operating budget?
Yeah, so I think we kind of take a multiple approach, and that's kind of the fun part of the innovation. So first of all, I have a very strong capable team, continue to drive what is the next generation tool requirement with machine learning, global optimization, all the different techniques to really drive the PPA, the runtime improvement. And then the other part is, we look at, I mentioned earlier, some of this professor, we engage with them, some of the project we work with them, and then see whether we can bring in some of this new technology to integrate with our tool. And then the other part is being a venture capitalist, and not many people are still investing in semiconductor. I receive like 1,500 business plan a year, and I reach each one of them. So in a way, it give me a lot of insight into what are the new things coming up. And so it makes sense, we acquire or invest. If it doesn't make sense, we stay in monitoring their progress. And then along the way, the customer will point to us, this is something that they need, and then we will be just bring them in. A little bit like the, very good example is Rocketech. It's a great company from Israel, big acceleration engine that we love to have. And then customer tell us that we need to have that to integrate into our simulation tool. And then Anirudh done a great job integrate in, and then now customer just love it.
So of those 1,500 proposals that you get a year, how many of them are good, and how many of them are good now versus potentially in the future?
Yeah, usually I pay a lot of more attention, roughly about 30 of them, and then 30, 35, and then we really deep dive into it. And then on the average, most of the VC are not investing in semi or IP or tool. Roughly every year we put about 25 investment a year.
Is that through your fund or is that through Cadence?
Warden Fund, yes.
Is Cadence running a fund like that as well?
No. Okay. And Cadence, we just focus on the tool, IP, and support the customer. We keep it separate.
So we've seen an oscillation in the industry from hardware to the point where everything's going to be developed in software. Well, now that turns out to be not terribly efficient in terms of power and performance, and now we're going back to not quite hardware as the driver, but it's more software-defined hardware. Everything is becoming more specific. The problem is that the hardware industry has been losing engineers on a pretty regular basis, whereas the software engineers are exploding. Do we have the capability and the manpower to make the kinds of changes that the industry wants to make?
Yeah, it's a very good question. This is very dear to me. And so clearly, a lot of professors in the great university think that semiconductor is a sunset industry. And I try to convince them that it's not, because they have so much influence to the engineering college student. And so we have at Cadence, we have a special university program, reach out all the best students among a couple of key universities that we like, and then also engaging heavily with the professor and make sure that they're understanding the EDA is still very important and still relevant. And then the other part is, clearly, you correctly point out, everything is software defined in our devices, and then from the networking, the switch, all the way to automotive related. And so software become more and more important. And so, just for example, we have a very good IP tool called Tensilica. It's a really low power programmable engine, really perfect for AI and machine learning, deep learning. And the key thing is really build the software stack on top of it with the compiler, optimizer, kernel, and library to build on that. And then for the different application from automotive for genomic sequencing, that I'm so glad that Jason Tong somewhere around here, and I invest in his company, Falcon Computing, using the simulation EDA tool to apply to genomic sequencing. That's a huge industry field. So back to your point, clearly how to convince and compete with Facebook and Google to get the talent to the EDA and semiconductor is not an easy task. As you know, Google and Facebook, their RSU is a lot, and sometimes it's very hard to match and compete. And then I have my two boys, EE in computer science, and I try to convince them to do hardware. They all decided to do software. So that's kind of software is the future for the young kids, and they love that. And rather than against that trend, try to convince them that combine EE and computer science, hardware and software, and that's where the holy grail is. And hopefully we get some percentage of those talent to come to us, and we have some success, so we are glad to do that.
Well, if you look at Facebook and Google and even a couple other large companies, they're doing their own hardware these days too. So it's not just all software guys, they're doing the hard stuff too. Are they now competition for EDA on hardware engineers?
Not quite, actually. They are my customers, and we love them dearly.
Okay, you've been talking a lot about machine learning and AI. How do you see that market playing out? And how does it play out both internally, because you're using it for your own products, and also externally? Is it going to be a big market in itself? Is it going to be start limiting jobs or changing them? This is nothing like what we thought about with 2001, A Space Odyssey, where you're starting to get to a singularity of AI where it's as good as a person and possibly better. This is a very specific task and it's completely different. But how do you see this working?
Yeah, I think the machine learning, deep learning is a very high priority for me because I think it's very broad impact to the industry, not just industrial IoT, not just the hyperscale web service application, ADAS, and the genomic sequencing that I'm dear to it. And so I think all in all, this impact going to be huge, as big as CPU and GPU. And in some way, I think Intel dominant in the CPU, and my good friend Jensen dominant in the graphic side, the GPU side. But there's a new class of hardware and software going to be driving the machine learning, deep learning. That application is very broad. And so I keep track of about 35 different startups and globally on the machine learning, deep learning. A couple of them I invest. And then meanwhile, I think you can tell, Google have more than 1,000 people working on the TensorFlow. Same thing with Amazon, same thing with Microsoft. I spend quite a bit of time to learn what they are doing. And so I think it's going to be huge, and they're going to need a lot of our EDA tool to support that design. And then meanwhile, I think we also using the machine learning, deep learning we know, and applying to our tool. And so I funded some of development that Anirudh, Tom Beckley, and Babu is driving on the IPs front, from the tool side, on the digital, from verification side, to the analog and packaging side, how to use machine learning, apply into our own tool to make it faster and make it more accurate from the previous experience, the inference that we can draw on. I'm excited. So we already see some of the earlier success, the performance, and they give me very regular update where we are making progress and what are the techniques we use. I think it's fascinating. And then customer and our partners really love it. They really encourage us to really drive, and even some of them collaborate with us very deeply. We're excited about it.
You have very specific needs for how you're going to use machine learning, though. When you go out into the general market, there's a lot of different competing architectures out there. There are TensorFlow. There's a couple others out of. Actually, I think you guys are working on your own. What are you developing? How do you come up with tools that will actually come across this industry? And that's part of what this whole conversation is about. Is there's so many things changing that in order to develop tools, you now have to hit a lot of different markets.
Yeah, so I think some of this machine learning, deep learning, some of the startup I'm involved, and I think the key is the linear scaling. And so when you have a 32 core, you really need to have 32x performance, so optimized for the machine learning. And then not just the silicon itself, and also the software stack had to be optimized for it. And then so some of this we are really, Cadence, on the tool side and our packaging and our IP, we're embracing some of this development because we want to be partner with them, and they have a lot of technology, a lot of architectural change. We learn a lot by working with them, and so I think that part, it really depends on what are the applications. Like automotive is a big topic, and then the data center cloud is a huge topic because the data analytics and the data requirement are very different workloads that they are trying to address, and then more and more intelligent they need to have so that they can program the more bandwidth to whatever application they need in a very dynamic way. And so those a lot of software requirement, and from our tool how to optimize that, we learn a lot.
Is there any consistency that allows you to say this tool will operate? Here's the big opportunity for this type of tool, or is it still sort of in an embryonic stage where we haven't quite gotten to that yet?
Yeah, I think a lot of more application driven. It's not just one tool fix all. And so that's why I think working and collaborating with customer is really the deal, is a whole holy grail. And that's why I think Cadence culture of willing to learn and willing to work with the customer, the leading customer, and learn from them and listen to them, and they welcome that.
Well, the buzz phrase that I've heard is mass customization, right? That's really what you're trying to get to because there are so many different implementations of everything. But can we do that with the kind of tools that we have today, or do we have to start changing the strategy back at the EDA front?
I think what I can say is there are some customization, specific customer or application, But in general, I think we rewrite most of our tool, and in fact, that's why we have this 23 new organically built tool. Is really driving massive parallelism and make sure that can scale to 100 CPU. And then secondly, really driving some of this machine learning, deep learning from the experience we have, and then drive much faster converge PPA and runtime the customer look for. And then the other part is also kind of to drive some of this some of our tool. Actually today, all our R&D are ported into the cloud. And so able to use massive capacity that Amazon and Microsoft can provide, and then to drive our engineering requirement so that we can do this massive architecture change. And our CIO is really good, and then helping our engineering to really drive some of this can scale up to 1,000 CPU in one of this new product we just came out called Pegasus. And so that you don't have to worry about the peak load and then supercomputer. You can massively scaling, the people's already built the infrastructure, like our friend at Amazon and Google and Microsoft, and that is fascinating.
You know, when I look at the markets that will use machine learning, the one that comes to mind that's sort of obvious is automotive right now. You're driving down the road, your car has to be able to not only identify what's in front of it, people crossing, it has to be able to distinguish between, well, ultimately it may be distinguishing between is this person worth killing or is this person worth killing based upon the actuarial tables. However, the question I have for you though is, will this roll out the way people think it will? And will it roll out in the time frame that people think it will? We're now at, I think you're talking about level 2 for the most advanced cars on the 0 to 6 or 0 to 5. And we have a long way to go to get to the next stage, and we have a lot of problems, such as if a car fails in a one lane, how does it get through 2 other lanes of cars that are not autonomous in order to get to the side of the road safely? Where are we? What does EDA fit in, bring into this picture?
Good question. It's very dear to my heart because I drive my Tesla car from Piedmont to Santa Clara every day, and then return home too. And some of my colleagues know, while driving to work, at least I have 50 email or texts. And so level 5 driving is very important to me. It's a holy grail that I can't wait to have. So, and then like my good friend Andy Patterson, he investing in company that solve his problem. And so I try to find something that to solve my problem. Currently, I think the autonomous driving is kind of more level 2. Your hands still have to be around, make sure that you don't crash. And then the LiDAR is not good enough. And so I have been investing in the level 4, level 5 sensor. And I found one that I really like, and I just put the investment and from Warden. And then the same thing with the software. And it's a perceptive software from the ground up, and it's hard to do. And a couple of people are willing to do that. And rather than the very high level, like cruise control and a few others. And we like to really build the foundation accurate software. It takes a little bit longer time on doing it. And so I think the trend of moving to level 4, level 5 is nearer than we thought. And so I'm excited about it. And
How near?
How near? Hard to tell. It basically depends on how many test cases. They all certify and make sure that they have a lot of data to certify, make sure the insurance feel comfortable, people feel safe to drive it. But I think the progress it make, I'm excited about. And then some of the new startup is really cool. And then some of the major automotive companies from Tesla, GM, Ford, and Audi, they are all heavily investing. I'm delighted to see them. Some of them co-invest with me. And so I think, back to your question about EDA. So there's some requirement in terms of automotive, clearly the function safety. And then the other part is some of the sensor requirement. They are really addressing some of the very disruptive material, disruptive frequency sensor. And so all this we try to support some of these key component company to address some of their requirement or performance they need. So our tool will be able to support, and IP will be support. Tensilica play a very important role in that because it's programmable, very low power, and you can stack and scale it. And so I think we are kind of looking at every opportunity. The high speeds, connectivity is critical because of audio, video requirement. Rather than 10 gig, now it's talking about 10 gig, rather than 1 gig, because 10 gig, eventually 50 gig. And so we are kind of supporting all the key component player to meet some of the requirement they need to tier one and also to the automotive player. And then we also kind of reaching out to some of the CTO thought leader on the automotive side. So I have a very frequent discussion with them, what they needed, and so to make sure that we can support the right key component company to deliver what they need to meet that requirement.
And this is a potentially huge market for EDA, right? Because we have to verify that these chips will last for 10, 20 years.
Or 35 years, in aviation.
This is a lot of seats that never existed before out in the marketplace. And it's also a lot more money in terms of let's debug these things and make sure that these are up to snuff in terms of this will work and you will not crash because the part was defective. The problem is that we're now dealing with car companies that say they want to go to 5 nanometers or 7 nanometers, and none of this stuff has any history. We have no idea how these things are going to behave out in the marketplace. Can we do this as an industry?
Good question. And so far they didn't ask for 7 or 5 nanometer, and they are mostly mixed signal, and so we are safe on that part. But again, we are pushing really hard on my team on the 7 nanometers with our key customer in foundry. Now we're embarking heavily on the 5 nanometer and 3 nanometer. So something that we just have to continue, and people thought that will be slowing down. Unfortunately, some of our customers are raising down to 5 and 3, and so we have to support them, and they're a big player, and they have a lot of muscle to make it happen. And so again, we just have to continue double, triple down on the investment side. And then I always look at purely from financial side, if there's a real customer willing to pay for it, I'm in. And so rather than talking, is some real people want to put real money behind, and there's a volume for it. And then so clearly we are definitely want to be supported. Back to your automotive question, I think it's a great opportunity. We don't take it lightly, but meanwhile, it take time. So it's not like overnight you're going to be like the mobile. And so we just have to be patient, and some of this vertical is great. I'm a big believer in the data center hyperscale web service, and they have big capex to scale, and I love that. And then second part is the industrial IoT is real, and from the GE point of view, from the the Siemens of the world, and then the Schneider Electric that I'm close to, and it's real. And so I think all in all, I think some of this vertical, back to my point that EDA had to transform ourselves into the system design enablement. That's why we have been talking about from EDA 360, if you recall, to this SDE, and nothing has changed. It's just more refined. And at the end of the day, it's the application driven from our customer and the service provider, and we love them dearly, and we work closely with them.
One of the markets that we've talked about in the past, and we always thought it was just on the brink of getting there, but it never quite got there, was medical. It seems to have, it makes a logical sense that electronics would be used there, but this thing has stalled out repeatedly. Where are we? Is this going to finally change?
Yeah, I think it's a very exciting space, and I personally interested in that because I lost a couple of my friends, and my wife told me that I'm in the age group, people die from cancer, and so I'm always looking for cancer. So cancer is a very unique situation that is not one drug cure all, it's patient specific, and that's why the whole genomic sequencing, immunotherapies, and I invest a couple of them. And then I'm excited about Jason Tong, professor, is really driving this Falcon computing. If you're not familiar with this company, using the simulation and EDA apply into acceleration of genomic sequencing analysis. And that to me is a holy grail. And so I think we are just beginning of that whole, patient-specific data that, able to address the, specific disease specifically for a particular patient. And that data analytics is tremendous value. And, whoever own it are going to be a really huge market cap. And so, I think this EDA is not stopping at EDA on the silicon. You apply into automotive, apply into medical. We are at this age of the group that health is more important. And so I think it's whatever we can think of, and that the whole machine and human and able to drive some of this analytics for us, and it's tremendous value that we can bring for the industry and the humankind.
So basically what you're talking about here is very good for EDA because it's lots and lots of compute power.
Yes.
Lots of chips, lots of processing, massive data throughput, storage, I/O. You're dealing with all this stuff moving at very high speed. You've got all the power issues. You've got the design issues. You've got, and also data mining on top of that, which is even more processing.
Yeah, in some way, the EDA, this is the most exciting time for EDA business. And, my team and I, we are working really hard. And because, we excited to see that contribution we can make to the society, to humankind. And then the other part, I'm so excited that beside the, 10b5-1, that my option expire, I haven't sold a single share. And because I believe in it, and it's going to be a great platform. And I think we can do a lot, like you described earlier, in the automotive, in IoT, in the medical, in the defense industry, and whole data center. And so I think it's just exciting. And then, by the way, if you look at this year to date, semiconductor is doing great. And a friend of mine that he's managing a huge amount of money in semiconductor, he's up 38%. And then EDA, if you look at all the EDA players,
you just say 38%?
38% return. And so semiconductor is great. If you look at NVIDIA, it's almost $100 billion company. And then same thing with Broadcom. My good friend Hawk is running it. It's over $100 billion market cap. It's a good time in the semiconductor and EDA. And so I'm excited.
So what does EDA become? Looking out at the industry here, what is it really EDA, or is it something else these days?
As I mentioned earlier, from EDA, it transformed more into the system design enablement, providing a solution to the system, service provider, and of course our semiconductor customer that we love them dearly.
Okay, I think we're done, but thank you. This was a fabulous conversation. Thank you all for hanging in here.
Great, thank you.